2019 meeting of the Planning Commission. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Berman.
Present.
Commissioner Campbell.
Here.
Chair Clifford.
Present.
Commissioner Niblin.
Here.
Commissioner Kraske.
Here.
Commissioner Big Stick.
Here.
Okay, and we'll move on to the salute to the flag. Commissioner Campbell, can I ask you to do that?
Certainly.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Okay, moving right along to administrative business. I'm looking for an approval of the order of agenda. Commissioner Niblin?
I'll move for approval of the order of the agenda.
Okay, do we have a second? Commissioner Campbell?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Moving on to the next is the approval of the minutes for June 3rd, 2019. Commissioner Campbell?
I'll move that we approve them.
Okay, and Commissioner Big Stick?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that also passes unanimously. Delegation of a liaison to the City Council meeting. I'm seeing that there's none needed. And now we're going to move on to oral communications. This portion of the agenda is available to the public to address the Planning Commission on any issue within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission that is not on the agenda. The time allowed for any speaker will be 3 minutes. Is there anybody that would like to speak to the Commission on any item that's not on the agenda tonight? I'm not seeing anyone, so I'm going to close oral communications and move on to public hearings. There's no consent items, so I'm moving on to public hearings. We're going to go to the annual report of the use permit for UP 041-15 for a 7-Eleven store at 700 Hickey Boulevard, and modifications of condition of approval number 56 of the City Council Resolution number 40-215. Can I have a staff report?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Senior Planner Christian Murdoch. The item before you is an annual review of the 7-Eleven convenience store located at 700 Hickey Boulevard. It is the second annual review since the store opened in 2017. As explained in the staff report, staff's inspection of the 7-Eleven store found it to be substantially in compliance with the conditions of approval imposed on the project by the city. In particular, the alcohol sales area is compliant with the applicable space limitations. Furthermore, the police chief has analyzed calls for service attributable to the 7-Eleven store and has found that it is not a significant source of police department activity. Code enforcement staff from the planning department also indicated that no complaints have been received about the store during the time since the last annual review. Because operation of the store was found by the Planning Commission to be in substantial compliance with the conditions of approval in 2018, and because staff believes there is evidence to support the same finding at this hearing, staff has recommended revising the condition of approval, which requires annual reviews of the store. The revised condition would provide for one more annual review, after which the annual review requirement would end, assuming the Commission found the next annual review to be substantially in compliance with the conditions of approval. There currently is no end date to the required annual reviews. For the reasons set forth in the staff report and in this presentation, staff recommends that the Planning Commission find the operation of the 7-Eleven store at 700 Hickey Boulevard to be substantially in compliance with the conditions of approval imposed on the operation of the store. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Niblin?
Just really quickly, having gone through the report, and thank you, by the way, for the very well put together report, and the table I thought was especially helpful laying out the various conditions. The one condition that caught my eye, I guess, was condition 16, because that was one where there was some some concern that was expressed, and it's related to, it looks like rusted roof access ladder, the side yard gates, and deposits of trash, et cetera. A couple questions. One is the extent to which those conditions are actually visible from the street, as opposed to, with the focus kind of on aesthetic impacts, I guess. And then secondly, whether or not we are confident that those matters have been addressed. I mean, from my own perspective, this didn't look like anything that was probably too far out of what you might expect to see in a number of businesses, recognizing that not every business operates under a use permit like this. But, so just kind of curious about those things.
Sure. So I think your statement that the conditions at the site are not out of character with similar types of commercial operations in busy areas, I think fits with staff's assessment. I would say, however, related to condition 16, the items identified largely are visible from the public way.
I see.
In particular, the ladder is rather visible as it goes from the ground all the way to above the roof at the project site. Additionally, the deposits of trash, for example, in the landscape planters and the bare patches of mulch are in sites visible and immediately adjacent, in some cases, to the public sidewalk. And so I think those are important elements to continue for the property owner to continue to maintain in an improved manner.
Excellent. And have we received indication that these are going to be sort of dealt with in a timely way?
Sure. So as noted in the report, I did advise 7-Eleven of my findings, and they have communicated to me they've made their best efforts to address those items in the time provided prior to today's hearing. I understand that potentially the ladder may not have been painted, as has been explained to me by 7-Eleven. Their maintenance crew attempted, but due to the weather conditions and fog and humidity, the paint wasn't applying as desired, and so I'm not sure and was not able to visit the site again today to confirm. But they have made efforts, as has been represented to me.
Thanks so much.
Okay, any further questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm going to give the applicant an opportunity to come up and speak. Is the applicant here? No. Okay. Well, then I guess I'll open the public hearing. Yes, I'm opening the public hearing. Speakers will have 3 minutes to speak. Please get cards in if you if you wish to speak. I have 2 cards right now. The first card is Betty Duran. So Betty, you have 3 minutes.
Sorry about that.
I need a few minutes to set up, but not many. A few seconds, really. I'm ready. Good evening. I'm Betty Duran, and I live at 694 Parkview Circle. I am the second closest resident to the 7-Eleven at 700 Hickey Boulevard. I know some of you are aware of our neighborhood's efforts to keep this 7-Eleven out of our community. In 2015, just when it seemed we might actually succeed, we were thrown under the bus. 7-Eleven made a contribution to Sunset Ridge Elementary, our neighborhood school. The franchisee joined the Chamber of Commerce, and 7-Eleven became a sponsor of the Fog Fest. In other words, we were sold out by some of the very members of this community that are tasked with preserving our neighborhoods. Some of this was done knowingly, some I'm not sure, but that's now ancient history. Now what is being attempted is a bait and switch strategy. You told us one thing, and now you want to do something else. Why the need for a yearly review? For the most important reason, because 7-Eleven is a bad actor. The best predictor of future behavior is relevant past behavior. I don't want to be like the neighbor near the Manor 7-Eleven, who after 18 years of complaining to corporate, and also I believe to the franchisee, was finally able to get some relief after our neighborhood mobilized. This 7-Eleven has the same franchisee as the Manor location. The purpose of the yearly review is to make sure conditions are being adhered to. The last time I attended a meeting regarding 7-Eleven, they were not in compliance with Condition 12, the alcohol portion. While the staff report showed they were in compliance, upon further review of that report, it was determined they were not in compliance. They were eventually brought into compliance. You should also consider that prior to these meetings, staff actually goes to visit the site. 7-Eleven had every opportunity to be in compliance. I would also like to add that after that meeting, on at least 2 occasions that I am aware of, I have the receipts, beer was sold at other than the designated times. Let me move to Condition 16, the landscaping. I can assure you that the weather at the Fairmont Shopping Center directly across from 7-Eleven and the weather at Park Pacifica Apartments across the street on Gateway is exactly the same weather that happens at the 7-Eleven. They even have many of the same plants. Yet 7-Eleven, after being afforded several years to grow those plants, has not been successful. My guess is that too little effort has been made on their part. The annual review is an important condition, one of the most important. It gives our community a chance in a public forum to voice our concern. Staff indicates that they spend more than 3 hours preparing for each annual review. Surely Fairmont is worthy of that small amount of time, especially since many, many more hours and many meetings were held to condition this site. In closing, let me say you are our voice, my voice. You are charged with guiding policies in this neighborhood's collective behalf. You influence the tenor of our society. By my presence here today, I assert that my idea and words deserve your attention. You are my audience. Please consider my comments in making your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. My next speaker is Dan Stedgen.
It's been a while since I've seen such a good-looking group of people in government. I'd like to welcome Commissioners Big Stick and Commissioners Berman here. I'm pleased to see what you guys are doing here. Stop by McDonald's a minute ago. Great chain from what I see, you know. Clean, beautiful new location in Lindemar. You know, I love a Big Mac. Love to have them at 7 a.m., but I've never, ever been able to buy one before 10:30 a.m. Something they've got going on there, some magic software, employee training. They'll never sell you a Big Mac before 10:30 a.m. What I'd like to see here tonight is I'd like to see this agenda item continued until September 2020, or I'd like to see the applicant, if they're here, voluntarily withdraw their request. Every time I'm an early morning runner, every time I see a homeless guy with beer in his hand, I always ask him, you know, where'd you get this? The answer is always 7-Eleven. My photos of the cooler 90 days after occupancy match the photos of noncompliance found at last year's meeting. It's my contention they've been in noncompliance from 90 days after opening or before to the date of last meeting. I went to 7-Eleven, you know, you can see from the first document, City Pacifica bans them from selling alcohol 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. State of California bans them from selling alcohol 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. 4 a.m., I bought alcohol, you can see it there. That was immediately after the last planning meeting when they were certified to be in compliance. Then last Saturday, you can see I bought alcohol there twice, 5:36 a.m., 5:37 a.m. These aren't just banned by the City of Pacifica, these are banned by the State of California. Quote Teddy Roosevelt here, you know, I can speak softly and carry a big stick. All apologies to Commissioner Tiger Jazz there. I don't have to have you guys solve this problem. At any time, I can go to Alcoholic Beverage Control and yank 7-Eleven's license. It's easy to do. I've got more than 30 documented receipts of alcohol purchases outside State of California regulations. What I'd like to see you do is work with these guys, see if you can extend this, continue it till September 2020, and see if there's some way they can get into compliance and many different employees, many different times, many different SKUs. You know, they're clearly selling alcohol in violation of California law. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any more cards for this item?
No further
Okay,
cards.
thank you. Then I guess I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Niblin?
I guess my inclination is to move forward with staff's recommendation. It looks to me like, you know, we've got some evidence here of alcohol sales that I guess some members of the public have actually engaged in and brought us receipts for, which is, you know, interesting and you know, I think is probably of concern. I think it ought to be dealt with through the ABC if, in fact, it is an issue that warrants action by the ABC. I think we've got staff's, you know, review that staff has undertaken. You know, to add this to the mix, I don't think is either appropriate or necessary at this point. I'm frankly ambivalent about the extent to which we change conditions of approval to sort of mandate that, you know, next annual review be the last one. I'm frankly okay with that. I'm also okay with maybe taking it up next year at the time that we actually do that annual review, rather than taking any particular position on that matter at this time. I frankly am in support of the motion that's in the packet.
Thank you. Commissioner Campbell?
Yeah, my comments run along the same lines. I would be curious the police chief's take on what we heard tonight. But I do think that this is, if there's violations of state law, it's outside of our purview up here as a planning commission, more in probably some other jurisdictional venue.
Yeah, certainly. Again, I'm Dan Stadler, your chief of police. You're speaking specifically about the outside of state law hours.
Yeah.
So the way the police department generally deals with those is on a complaint basis. Most of our alcohol enforcement is geared towards sales to minors and minor decoy stuff, which is what our grant from the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control covers, and where we notice most of the problems in our community. However, when something like this would come to our attention, we certainly have the staffing and the expertise on our staff to deal with this issue, to test this issue and report to ABC on it. As a matter of fact, if something like this were reported to ABC, it's highly likely they're going to turn around and send it right back to us, as we have a grant and we can prepare the proper, simply turning in receipts, while it presents some sort of evidence, ABC is not going to yank somebody's license by presenting a receipt. It's going to require some law enforcement intervention and actually taking a look at it, which again is very, very easy for us to do.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief. Are you done?
I had just one other comment. I think the only thing I would make a change to on the motion for approval would be to require, where it says to require only one further approval, I would just say, if appropriate, just to give us, just to send, put everyone on notice that, you know, we may extend it another year, depending on the circumstances.
Okay. Commissioner Berman?
I was wondering if the applicant is here at this time. I know a couple minutes ago they weren't, but wondering if they walked in late. Chair Clifford, is now an opportunity for the applicant to speak, or is it not?
I think the time has passed because I asked for the applicant to come forward. I opened the public hearing, asked them to come forward, and then closed the public hearing. I guess if you would like to request I could reopen the public hearing and let them speak.
I just had a question for the applicant. Would that be okay?
That would be fine.
Okay. So
Come up to the mic, please.
I guess first question will be, are you the owner or the manager of the 7-Eleven?
I represent 7-Eleven, so I don't have legal
Okay.
here.
Okay. Did you state your name for the record?
Mindy Leon?
Okay. I guess given that you've had 2 prior annual reviews, what is your main incentive to stop the annual reviews? Just being subject to Planning Commission requirements? Or I'm trying to understand what the main benefit from your side would be to terminate the annual reviews.
I mean, in speaking for the franchisee and for 7-Eleven, is we want nothing more than to be in compliance with the city of Pacifica. So it's just really working with you all to make sure that we are in compliance with all of these things. It benefits us just as much as it benefits the community to have what's right happening.
Okay, that was my only question for you. Thank you. So me
Will you stay, please, for a minute?
Personally, I think it's a nice opportunity, kind of as stated, to kind of have an annual check-in of how is the community kind of reflecting on the service that 7-Eleven's providing, and there's many benefits to having a nearby store to living in a community, and then also, in turn, I think it benefits the community members to have an opportunity to kind of voice opinions and check in, and just listening to what the police chief had to say. It sounds like some issues could be handled, if there are issues, they could be handled at the municipal level, which is another good opportunity too. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner. I'm going to jump in because I had a couple of questions and nobody was here to answer them. In terms of, you haven't been able to paint the ladder. Could you give me the reason again why you haven't been able to do that?
Just with the weather conditions, it has been started, it just hasn't been completed.
Okay.
So as soon as it was brought to our attention that those maintenance issues were addressed immediately, we just haven't been able to complete it due to the weather conditions.
Okay. And what's the reason that the trash hadn't been taken care of as part of just regular operations?
Yeah, it is part of regular operations. It's something that we have been on top of with our staffing, training new staff and putting it in our job requirements for each shift. There's just been certain times with different weather conditions, again with the wind in that area, that tends to blow things against the one fence. So it's just been one of those ongoing challenges that we just have to do a more diligent job with. And the franchise owner is on top of that.
And the trash you're recovering, is that trash generated from your store, or what is the mix on this trash that you're finding?
It's everything. So it's literally can be blown from across the street. It can be anything. So it's literally from newspapers to trash from 7-Eleven to anything else that you'd find on the street. So it's just the way the wind blows it against our fence, and it's something that is just part of the job that we need to do to keep it cleaned up.
Thank you for the answers. Commissioner Big Stick.
Sure. Testing? Hi. Substantially, I agree with my fellow commissioners, and the common thing both our speakers raised was the alcohol question, which doesn't sound like something we can solve here tonight, but does maybe need to be addressed later through other parts of our community. And I feel more comfortable saying that we shouldn't have more review maybe next year, when we would be saying we shouldn't have more review. So perhaps we can just answer that question next year.
Okay, and Commissioner Niblin?
Thank you. This is just one more question for the rep. Thank you for being here. I was curious about the number of full-time equivalent employees at this point at the 7-Eleven there, and what's the sales tax revenue to the city, if you know?
I'd have to get with the franchise owner on that. I apologize. I don't have those numbers.
I don't know if anybody on staff has that kind of information available. Okay, well, I'd posit those are important considerations, and I think it goes to something Commissioner Berman was suggesting earlier, is we need to look at these things holistically.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming up to the mic and answering our questions. I'm going to, yes?
Chair, if I may, Commissioners indicated that the matter of selling alcohol outside of authorized hours was a matter of state law and not of local importance. I just wanted to draw your attention to condition of approval number 12 from the use permit. In fact, there is a condition of approval restricting the hours, indicating they shall be permissible only during the hours of 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. daily. It's the same condition of approval that restricts the size of the alcohol sales area. And so it is of relevance to this use permit. It's not only a matter of state law for separate enforcement.
Thank you for that information. Commissioner Niblin?
Well, two things. One, I want to clarify, I don't think anybody would suggest it's not a matter of local importance. I think it is a matter of local importance, and I realize it's a condition of approval, and I think it may be more appropriately dealt with through ABC, I think is more what I was getting at. And given that it wasn't identified by staff in the course of staff's review of the use permit, I thought maybe a different route would be more appropriate to address it, but I certainly understand it's important. Having said all that, I want to make a motion unless someone else has got anything else they want to say about the matter.
I will allow you to make the motion, but I've got a couple of things, so I'm going to allow it with discussion.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I want to move to adopt the attached resolution, find the annual review and modification of a condition of approval from the California, let me strike that. I want to modify this a little bit based on the discussion we've had. Move to adopt the attached resolution to find the annual review exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, find that the operation of a 7-Eleven convenience store at 700 Hickey Boulevard is substantially in conformance with use permit UP 4115. And incorporate all maps and testimony into the record by reference. I think we should, my motion is that we essentially punt until next year whether or not we want to modify the condition of approval.
Okay, and Commissioner Big Stick? I will second. Okay, and I do have some discussion before I'm going to call for the vote. I am actually quite concerned about this, the sale of alcohol during hours that is prohibited. That doesn't jibe well with me, and I would like to know from you, is there any signs posted near the register that tell the clerks that they're not to sell before 6 in the morning?
Yes, there is. And that's something we were just discussing as well, that we can also add locks to the cooler doors to help with that procedure also.
Because I personally would not want to see this come back
Agreed.
and next year and have the same issue going on.
Agreed.
Okay. All right, that's as much discussion as I want to make. Is there anybody else that wants to make any discussion? Okay, then I'm going to call for a vote on our motion in a second. It's been seconded. Okay, and that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We're moving on to a tentative subdivision, map SUB 239-18, modification of a subdivision regulation, MOD-45-19, and heritage tree removal authorization to subdivide one existing 52,271 square foot, and that's an acre, 1.2 acres lot, into 3 lots, construct an approximately 290-foot-long extension of Clarendon Road, and remove 8 heritage trees at the site located at the northeast intersection of Carring Crossway and an unimproved portion of Clarendon Road in East Sharp Park. May I have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Senior Planner Christian Murdoch. Staff received one written public comment prior to this evening's hearing, which has been shared with the Commission and made available for the public at the rear of the Council chambers. The project before you involves the subdivision of a 1.2-acre site into 3 lots. This project does not include details of any future development on 2 of the new proposed lots. Under the city's subdivision regulations, this involves the subdivision of land only and not the development permits for the future homes. The site currently consists of 1 lot with 1 single-family residence currently under construction on the western portion of the site on the proposed parcel A. The site is otherwise undeveloped currently and covered with a mix of vegetation and trees, including heritage trees. The average slope of the site is 35.7%. Access to parcel A will remain from Charing Crossway at the western extent of the subdivision. Access to parcels B and C at the center and eastern extent of the subdivision would be provided from an extension of Clarendon Road. Because the street extension would result in a dead end of more than 150 feet from the last turnaround point, the subdivision would include a fire apparatus turnaround along the boundary of parcels B and C. This turnaround would serve a dual function in that it would also provide access to the driveways of any future homes constructed on the lots. In addition to seeking approval of the subdivision, the applicant has requested approval of a modification of the subdivision regulations to authorize 1 lot, known as Parcel C, to have a lot area less than the 20,000 square foot minimum required by the city's subdivision standards. As explained in greater detail in the staff report, staff supports the applicant's request because it results from the applicant's attempt to achieve the greatest reasonable degree of compliance with both the subdivision lot size standards and the low-density residential density requirements of the general plan. As proposed, parcels A and B would comply with the 20,000 square foot lot size requirement, and the exception would only be required for parcel C. As explained in the staff report, the low-density residential land use designation of the site assigned by the general plan indicates that the site should have a minimum of 4 units based on the site's size of 1.2 acres and the 3 to 9 units per acre density of the low-density residential designation. To achieve 4 units on the site, the average lot sizes would need to be 13,067 square feet on average, which is well below the 20,000 square foot standard. As proposed, parcels A and B would comply with the 20,000 square foot lot size requirement, and parcel C would be 11,976 square feet. The resulting density of the project would be 2.5 units per acre, which under Pacifica Municipal Code regulations would round to 3 units per acre density. For comparison purposes, if the project complied with the 20,000 square foot lot size standard on all lots, the site would include only 2 lots with average lot sizes of just over 26,000 square feet, and the resulting density on the site would be 1.7 units per acre, which rounds to 2 units per acre. This density would fall short of the general plan density standard. It is staff's assessment that the project as proposed has achieved the best balance of proposed lot sizes and density, and when considering other general plan policies with which the project is consistent, it is possible to make the necessary findings for approval of the subdivision. Therefore, staff recommends approval subject to the motion outlined in the staff report. Thank you.
Okay, questions for staff, and I'm seeing Commissioner Big Stick.
I have a handful of questions. The subdivision standards are 20,000 feet. Is there a safety reason for that, or how has that number come to?
Sure. There's no single reason. It's a combination, if you read the city's standards, in terms of aesthetic standards, trying to preserve natural hillside areas by minimizing the amount of development and density. So thinking of the number of structures sort of scattered along hillsides, which are special areas of desired protection under the city's regulations. It also indicates the complexity of developing on hillsides where massive development or grading would require massive retaining walls and so forth. And so in combination, all of those factors have led to the city's standards indicating larger lot sizes for hillside areas.
Thank you. So it wasn't until I was actually there that the streets started making sense to me. The part of Clarendon that should be extended. So there's like that, you have that intersection, and then there's that kind of wooden sectioned off thing. That would be where Clarendon would go through, right? Where that So there's Charing, and then right next to it is Clarendon. And it was confusing until I actually got there and looked at it, because it's almost like they share the same strip of land for about half a second, and then Clarendon kind of goes off to the right, whereas Charing stays straight.
So to be clear, Charing Cross is located at the western end of this subdivision. The street extension is actually on the eastern end. So continuing Clarendon Road where it exists off of Scenic Way at the far east of the project area. And so the street extension would not be intersecting with Charing Cross Way.
It would not come straight through.
It would not.
Okay, now that that's straight in my mind, somebody brought up the idea to me that it might make it difficult to turn around at the end of Clarendon if it's coming from the east side. Is there a plan in place to make sure that it's fairly easy to turn around, or is the 26 feet that I think it's supposed to be, should that in theory be enough for a regular three-point turn?
So unlike the existing condition where the two homes are currently built off of Clarendon Road just west of Scenic Way, this project would include a fire apparatus turnaround, which is sized to allow fire engines and other fire apparatus to turn around. So in light of that, with the rather large size of those vehicles, ordinary passenger vehicles would be able to turn around, I think in a safer way than they can currently. I think as well with the wider street width than the current extension of Clarendon Road, the three-point turn, as you described it, likely would be easier to accomplish as well on the street extension.
So final question then on that point, and then I think I'm done for the moment. Where that fire truck turnaround would be, how much farther past that is Clarendon going to be going?
I think
Or is that where it stops?
I think not much further at all. So this type of turnaround requires an area to back into on the last point of the three-point turn. And so however long that is, I don't have the dimension immediately available. Perhaps the applicant's engineer or our city engineering staff will have that, but it's only long enough to allow construction of that turnaround.
Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Berman?
Just so I could understand the possible life of this project as it relates to the planning department. So right now we are reviewing the subdivision of the land and not the development. So I know typically we review parking requirements and other items which aren't included here. Will that come, I guess, when the development design is further along, and if there is an atypicalness that needs to bring it back to the Planning Commission, and then is that the time where we might review like parking, and is that correct?
So the zoning of the site is R1, single-family residential. It's one of the zoning districts in the city's zoning regulations that allows development of permitted uses and structures to enable those uses with a building permit only. And so barring some exception that would be needed to construct the home, such as a variance or a parking exception, staff level review only would be required to allow a building permit to be issued for homes on the proposed parcel B and parcel C.
Okay, got it.
Staff's review includes ensuring parking compliance, so the two-car garage, driveway or street parking, and so forth.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Christie?
Yes. With regard to the extension of the road, did your department ever consider requiring a traffic study requiring the applicant to do a traffic study?
So I think our city engineering staff should address what traffic engineering considerations there may be for this project. The planning department was involved only to the extent of the environmental review. Okay. And so for the proposed categorical exemption, among several different factors that need to be analyzed, there needs to be an assessment of whether there will be significant traffic caused by the project. In this case, with there only being 2 new lots created, that's a potential of 2 peak hour trips. And so the traffic engineering analysis that was prepared for the environmental review concluded that under no situation could 2 new trips in any intersection cause a significant adverse traffic impact. So that was the extent of the planning department's involvement in the traffic analysis.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, and I have one question. You talked about hillsides and such. Is this in a hillside preservation district area?
It is not in the Hillside Preservation District or HPD overlay. It's also not in the R1H Single-Family Residential Hillside Zoning District. It's simply zoned R1 Single-Family Residential.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to ask the applicant to come up and speak. And you will have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for having us tonight. My name is Mike O'Connell. I'm the agent for the applicant, so I'm happy to answer any of your technical questions. Mike Panisi is the applicant. He's in the back, and he can answer any non-technical questions you have. I'll keep this brief. We reviewed all the conditions of approval, and we don't take any exception to any of them, so we're here to answer any of the questions you have.
Okay. Does anybody have a question for the applicant? Okay, Commissioner Ruman?
Just out of curiosity, it probably doesn't land in the realm of Planning Commission. I noticed that there's a storm drain easement through the private property. I was wondering what was the limitation to running the storm drain within the right-of-way? Is it vegetation, or, because I noticed there's the water main through the Clarendon right-of-way.
Correct.
Is it possible to route the storm drain in the right-of-way?
It would be possible. One of the conditions we got from the Public Works Department was to provide the easement for the storm drain and other public utilities within the first, I guess, the southerly 10 feet of the line.
Mm.
So it is a bit of a combined system in the sense that it picks up the public water from the street and also ultimately the private water from the development. But I think it's noted on the plans as a privately maintained public storm drain easement.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
So if we put it in the right-of-way, I still think we're getting that condition where it's privately maintained.
Private.
The construction is a little easier along the top of the slope, that having it on the private property.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Any further questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I'm going to let you sit down if you'd like.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to open the public portion of the hearing. And I have several cards. My first card is Aaron Levin Saylor?
Correct.
Oh, my, I did it.
First guess, well done.
Thank you.
All right,
You have 3 minutes, sir.
thank you. Thank you, Commission. So I live on the other side of Brighton. I've got friends and neighbors who will be directly impacted by the proposed subdivision successive development. My primary request is that this commission take those neighbors into account, these members of the community, who would be impacted by erosion. So as you consider this, please ensure that their property and any runoff and erosion are fully taken care of and that their considerations are accounted for. That's all.
Thank you very much, sir. And my next speaker is Ron Adrader. It's not an error, but please say your name for the...
Certainly. My name is Ron Andrade. I live in 406 Brighton Road. And I am more or less neutral on this. I have certainly enjoyed the fact that the property behind my house has remained undeveloped. However, I would not want to stop an owner from being able to legally and legitimately develop and enjoy their own property. I would only sort of echo what Aaron has said, ask that any future development give strong consideration to those of us who are living downslope from this development, both in terms of sort of the size and scope and scale of what might be built, as well as I would really prefer that my house not get flooded, and and avoiding that unhappiness that would result. So that's all I have, and thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, sir. Mel Condos.
You did an excellent job of pronouncing my name. So I'm Mel Condos. I also live at 406 Brighton Road. Again, have loved looking at the hillside. I never presumed it was open space. Certainly loved looking at it. In the spirit of just being a good neighbor and talking to whomever is going to be living up there, understanding that hillside is remarkably wet. And the few times that hillside has been mowed over the years, our backyard and then garage flood just from mowing the hillside. So if there's going to be, again, I know we're not talking about the plans, but they're talking about these 5,400 square foot houses with an 1,800 square foot footprint. If they can please take into consideration that this is very wet, it causes flooding down the hill. I saw on the plans that they were talking about having drainage go on the road. I'm not really worried about the road. I'm worried about what's the water that's going to come down onto Brighton, my backyard, my garage. I would really love it if my house didn't flow into my neighbors' houses. That would make me super happy. So in the spirit of being good neighbors, if they could please take that into consideration, it's a remarkably wet hill.
Thank you very much. Bill Chrysler? I'm sorry, Bill.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bill Christ. I live at 343 Charing Cross. I was a little bit disappointed in the city's policy of such a short notice. You've given us essentially 10 days in the middle of August when most people are on vacation. Has the look of a railroad job. But nevertheless, in your traffic study, I noticed that there's no mention that you're going to be creating a 6-way intersection. No safety study. I challenge any of you guys to go out there at 7 o'clock in the morning and see what the traffic is like. You've got 2 blind streets that go in there, and I would suggest a traffic study to prevent a lawsuit if there's ever an accident, which I hope there would never be. The lot is only 60%, the one lot, parcel C, is only 60% of the required regulations. So why are the city regulations being changed for the benefit of the builder at the cost of everyone in the neighborhood? This isn't consistent with the neighborhood putting these houses up there. The drainage. I have a drainage problem. I live right across the street from the house under construction. I have a real problem with the drainage. The solution isn't going through my garage. That doesn't work. And Mike has told me, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, but the street's still full of mud from last winter that I track into my house every day. The trees, well, you're going to be taking down 17 trees from the hillside? I don't know if you guys like looking at open space with trees, but I do. And to see a big scar up there like what's left from the one house, that doesn't cut it for me. The endangered species that say there is none, nobody's been up there and seen the San Francisco Bay garter snakes, because they certainly live in our yard. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
It's Bradley. Bradley's the last name.
We can't make out
Can't make out the first name, sorry. Sorry.
We both need new glasses.
There's no doubt.
Barbara Bradley.
Thank you.
I live at 357 Brighton Road. I am not underneath, but directly opposite the Site A which you state is under construction, but I believe it's been finished for quite some time. We've also had to put up with building it for over a year and a half. Massive movement of dirt, continuously trimming of or cutting down of trees, and that's just A. 17 trees. I notice you only have protection for one heritage tree out of that 17 trees. Not they're all heritage, but only one is going to be protected. It's a public street on Clarendon Road, and why it can't be extended for an output for fire trucks to scenic is beyond me. Having a turnaround at this time put in place with no building, so you don't know what's going on there and how big a turnaround is feasible, and you're taking out, I believe, 2 or 3 heritage trees just for that alone. I wished you'd provided pics rather than an overhead plan of tree removal. It's easy enough to do. I've taken pictures from day one of what's been cleared off that hill. I have been there 42 years. It's not that I did not ever plan to see building there. I just thought it would be more in compliance with the look of the neighborhood. Extending a public road for a builder and removing trees so he can comply with what his plans are doesn't sit well with me. That's my road, not his. I just say that if this continues the way building Site A was done, that I'm not prepared to put up with 2 more years. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia Lylavoris?
Hi, I'm here to state my opposition to this modification of this proposed subdivision. I'm here on behalf of my mother, who is a homeowner on Clarendon. She's owned her home for over 21 years. Before that, she came to Pacifica in 1986. I lived in Pacifica for 2 years because I was displaced from my apartment in San Francisco because of a fire. So my mom is on vacation now, so that's why I'm here on her behalf. But for those 2 years that I lived in Pacifica, I fell in love with it. Previous to that, I had always appreciated it, but I really just, for those 2 years, it was really important that I was here. It's, life moves at a slower pace than San Francisco. There's just so much richness. So I'm here to emphasize that the neighborhood would be dramatically changed to the negative should any of this development go through. There's a peacefulness to this area, even though there is hustle and bustle, there's traffic at times, there's all kinds of, but the idea that a developer would impose such density on a neighborhood at the expense of homeowners that have been there 15, 20, 30, 40 years, it's just outrageous. In addition to the change of the quality of life, there's also the runoff issue, that even when the Campagna family wanted to develop that area, they were willing to address the serious runoff and potential flooding of that hillside of the area. When this construction of this property that's almost completed, the mud has been terrible. It's just the potential for all kinds of misery. And the idea that a millionaire developer would have the city comply with his needs over the needs of the community is just really abhorrent. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Russ Teasdale?
Good evening, members of the commission, and good evening, members of the public. My name is Russ Teasdale. I'm a resident of Sharp Park. I've lived in Sharp Park and in Pacifica for just under 20 years' time now. I wanted to bring specific attention of the council to the question of heritage trees. The application, as I understand, refers to the removal of 8 heritage trees. I've heard other commenters here tonight saying that as many as 17 heritage trees may end up being removed. As you all are no doubt aware, Pacifica's inventory of heritage trees continues to be impacted and attrited by natural aging, by development, by disease, and by adverse weather. We are fortunate to occupy a position along what ornithologists call the Pacific Flyway, which is a key route north to south for migratory bird species as they go back and forth. The heritage trees are an invaluable resource for bird species, some of them endangered, some of them threatened, as they move along the Pacific Flyway. Our heritage trees here in Pacifica do provide a resource by means of which these birds can obtain shelter, resting place, safety, and forage on their travels. Again, let me stress, as some other people have done, that my general instinct is to attempt to encumber to the least degree the enjoyment of a property owner and being able to do as they will with their property. However, there must be reasonable restrictions and modifications to development plans when certain things are outside of the scope. For instance, loss of heritage trees on a large scale, and this certainly constitutes a large-scale loss, particularly if there are as many as 17 trees to be removed. And something that was not part of my intended remarks, hearing people refer to flooding and slope stability issues, I can tell you from extensive prior experience in these matters that removal of trees on steep slopes certainly contributes further to flooding, to mudslides, and to downstream impacts of such developments. Thank you for your time this evening. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Athens, Chris? Is it? Athena. I didn't see the A on the end.
Hi, good evening. I would just like to reiterate some of the points that some of my fellow neighbors made. I live at 343 Charing Cross Way, which is the property adjacent to Parcel A that's been under construction. I'm also here speaking for 3 of the people who live on the corner of Lynetta who couldn't make it tonight. I'd like to just reiterate the point of flooding and mud. I live in the house that is being affected by flooding, and I've taken many pictures and, contacted the developer personally many times. We've had our garage flooded, we've had our front yard flooded. When you take the vegetation off of the hillside, it's clay, so it just tends to flow directly down. And we are still, dealing with a ton of dirt and mud just all over our property. I'd also like to kind of mention that this is where the San Francisco garden snake lives. I've lived here my entire life. I've seen them. They come into our property and our house, even as far as our backyard, which is, touching other people's properties as well. So I'm very, very worried about further development impacting the small land that Gypsy Hill encompasses for them. And I'd also kind of like to just mention that being across the street from this new house that's been being built, these guys have started at 6:50 a.m. I've seen them washing their paint into the groundwater. I've contacted the code enforcement. They told me that they have to see it personally. So there's just a long list of things that have kind of been building with this developer and what he's doing. So I just hope that you guys can take that all into account, and I'd love to answer any questions if you guys had any, but if not, then I'll yield my time. Thank you.
Okay, and my final card is Janet, and I'm not even going to try anymore. Would you please speak it into the mic for the record?
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Janet LaPlante. I live at 396 Brighton Road. I probably have the newest home on Brighton or in that area. It's 20 years old. The developer did a lot of drainage work, and I still get flooding every time it rains in my garage, in my backyard. And I'm worried about all the vegetation, the removing of trees. Now you're talking just mud. In 1982, we had a huge hillside slide in Park Pacifica where 3 children lost their lives. My bedroom is in the back. I'm always concerned about that hill coming down, but there's a lot of vegetation there right now. So with the removal of the vegetation, we're gonna have nothing but mud, rain. Every time it rains, we're gonna have nothing but mud and everything in our garages, our backyards. It's just really not fair to us. We have a lot of live animals up there. We have deer that come down, red fox. I also have had San Francisco gardener snakes in my yard, and we just put them back up on the hill, let them go back to their natural habitat. So we're going to disturb a lot if we put these homes. The current home they've just not quite completed looks like a hotel. It doesn't even look like a house. I feel sorry for my neighbors. The house is practically in their backyard. So, and the parcel B is going to be currently behind my house. The lot size is even larger. It's almost 200 square foot larger. I can't even imagine how big that house is going to be. So I'm a little concerned with the vegetation being removed, the animals being removed from their habitat, and all the mud and the dirt and everything that's going to cause when we have these horrible rains. So thank you for your time. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Please bring your card up and just go to the mic and announce. We'll get your, give the card, and then go to the mic and announce your name. That way we don't have to hold things up while I murder your name.
Hi, my name is Jane Nahas, and I'm at 392 Brighton. My house, yes, my neighbor told me, just said that parcel A is right in my backyard. But I've been in communication with the contractor, and I did tell him about drainage issues. When her house was being built, whoever did her drainage had the drainage diverted into my yard while the house was being built. So I did go to the city at that time and say, watch the drainage. It's coming into my, it's draining into my house. So I did say to Mike, the developer, be wary of the drainage in this area because I've seen it happening. So far, I think I haven't seen issues. He's trying to be considerate and respectful and trying to be a good neighbor. I mean, of course, tons of development we don't like, but we have to have, well, anyway, we have to be realistic. My main concern is drainage and the road, the Clarendon Road. Today, at about 6 o'clock, I'm looking for my bedroom. Anyone who has a white Prius, I don't know if you were driving up there, but you went past where the turnaround would be, and I watched to see if that car was how it was gonna get out. And it didn't go down Francis, but it backed up, and I was waiting for it to flip down the hill. So just someone was checking out the property. So that's a concern. That it has to end, and be careful that turnaround up there. Otherwise, people will be going past and dropping into yards. So drainage and the road is what I'm concerned about the most, and that's all I say. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I am now going to go ahead and close the public hearing.
Would you like to give the applicant a rebuttal?
Yes, I would like to do that. You have 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Just 3? I thought it was 10. No? 3?
No, you had the opportunity with the 10 earlier. Now you
Got it.
get 3
Okay.
for rebuttal.
I'll touch quickly on the drainage, because we heard a lot about that. So the amount of area that drains directly onto the lots on Brighton is going to be greatly reduced. It's intercepted by the V-ditch and the extension of Clarendon, and that water is piped to a detention pipe, which is oversized. It's sized for the 100-year storm per the city standards. And then from that pipe, the water is conveyed to an existing piece of storm drain infrastructure at the bottom of Charing Cross. So a lot of that drainage is going to be diverted. There's going to be erosion and sediment control plans in place as part of building permits. And then I want to remind everybody that there's a 30% limit on the grading of these lots. So it's not that all the vegetation can be removed. And I think that'll help with some of these erosion issues.
Hello, I'm Michael Panacci, the developer. First of all, the project is not complete yet. The road work was all kind of put on hold until April 1st. So as far as some of the neighbor, like Bill's concerns about runoff and this and that, it's been extremely hard to deal with. Main reason is I've had to work around a boat for about a year that was parked right in front of my job site, so it made the street hard to clean. And at times, we couldn't even get on site. But there was one incident where his front yard drain that goes in front of his garage had leaves or settlement, and it flooded. Now, his driveway does go down, and the street is pretty level. So that was one incident, but it was a very hard thing to work around, his lifestyle and the stuff that he left in the street and whatnot, and I thought I was quite accommodating. And I do, you know, I just ran an idea of like how many houses I've built in Sharp Park, and it's probably been, since I've been building, 13-ish, and that would be tear downs or new houses. And I feel like, you know, we do the best job we can, and I'm honored to create homes for people and that they are proud of. And I don't feel like this is like a massive development. And I actually like the house that I built there, and I'm you know, I'll be excited to be able to move on and sell it and see another family get to live in our neighborhoods. It's just been my experience that over the years, people, a lot of great people have moved into homes that I've had the honor of creating. Like I said, so anyways, that's that.
Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Big Stick.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about 3 clarifying questions of staff. First off, and I think it was stated earlier on in the staff report, but under normal conditions for an R1 zone for a lot this size, under normal conditions in which it weren't considered, as a term in the packet, mountainous, if it were not considered mountainous, how many homes conceivably could go into an R1 zoned plot of land this size?
3 to 9 units per acre is what the general plan indicates. Ordinarily, what you'd see is that a lot size would not be less than 5,000 square feet. And so you'd probably get something on the order of 8 to 9 units per acre maximum.
Up to 9 units?
8 to 9 units per acre. So on this 1.2 acre site, that's, I don't know, 10 to 12 units, something.
10 to 12 units. And after doing the subdivision, we're talking about 3 units?
Correct.
Thank you. Somebody brought up, again, the idea of the 6-way intersection, which admittedly, without, I had read the letter already, but without thinking about the letter before I went there, or when I did go there, I did think that maybe that was what was intended, and then what I heard you say earlier today was that is not what is going to be intended, since the extension is on the east side. that five-way intersection as it currently appears stays as it is, correct?
That's correct. That intersection would not be affected by this subdivision.
And because I did hear that comment from the letter, as I was pulling out and looking at it and noticing no stop sign, there was a bit of a concern. I was just in a place where there were roundabouts and my mind went off, but tonight is not a time in which we can really think in terms of that intersection. Is that correct?
Are you referring to the five-way intersection?
Yes, sir.
I'm not aware of what nexus this subdivision would have to that intersection and its existing complicated condition.
Thank you. And there are 17 trees that are being considered for removal. Only 8 of them are heritage trees. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Commissioner Campbell.
It seemed like a lot of the neighbors along Brighton were concerned about flooding associated with the vegetation removal on the hill. Just thoughts on this. I don't know. Really, I'd be kind of curious to actually the developer's thoughts would be, or the applicant's thoughts, or your thoughts. But I see the one condition is vegetation removal for the improvements associated with the subdivision shall occur only between September 1 and January 31st of each year, which can be a wet time of year. I'm just kind of curious what was the thinking behind picking that time period versus a drier time period in the year?
Sure.
Although we know that can be a beautiful time of the year here too, but you know,
Sure. So the applicant, I believe, chose to propose that period for vegetation and tree removal in light of the fact of potential bird impacts. And so I think they were trying to be sensitive in their project proposal by limiting themselves in their project description to removal only during that time period. Agreed, a portion of that is within the city's rainy season, and so any work on that hillside for these subdivision improvements during the rainy season would require authorization and insurance that it does have sufficient best management practices to protect runoff, siltation, and so forth from leaving the project site.
No, okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Motions? I have no questions. I'm good with this. Commissioner Big Stick?
Sure. The number one feedback I heard tonight was about flooding and runoff. What I heard from the developer sounded good. What I read in the staff report about how it's supposed to wind up after it's already built looked like the proper mitigation is in place. If maybe staff has any comment about flood and runoff during construction, you just said something, if you could say a little bit more, just to put at least my mind at ease and hopefully anybody else's, that would be helpful.
Sure. Under municipal code requirements, as well as requirements of regional and state and federal permits, certain types of construction activity, for instance, grading or building construction, excavation, and so forth, need to comply with what are called best management practices. And they're intended to control potential runoff from a construction site, which, as you can imagine, if you've ever hosed off your patio, for example, water can cause soil and other pollutants, as they're defined, to be carried in the water, and it will then flow downhill wherever the water ends up and carry those pollutants, including dirt, chemicals, and so forth, wherever the water ends up. So these best management practices, which include things like perimeter fences to prevent siltation, and erosion control measures like straw wattles and other implements, storm drain inlet covers, and so forth, they're intended to prevent soil and chemicals from being carried by water, typically stormwater, off of a construction site. And so any of these subdivision improvements that would be potentially approved by the Planning Commission would be required to implement best management practices of that sort, or BMPs as they're commonly called, to protect the surrounding areas from stormwater runoff. It's not to say they will stop the water, but the intent is to control the pollutants, including soil and chemicals, from flowing along with the water.
Thank you.
Commissioner Campbell?
Yeah, thank you for that. It does seem to me this issue of flooding is something that the building and engineering folks here in town really need to pay mind to, but it's something that I'm not sure we can 100% get at up here. I did want to note, and thank you for citing first directing me to the conclusions about working outside the nesting bird and bat maturity roost season, which is the reason for the September 1 to January 31st grubbing and that type of thing. Thanks. I'm in generally favor of moving forward on this one.
Okay, I am now waiting for either some more questions or comments or a motion. Commissioner Niblin?
Well, I'm ready to make a motion unless somebody else would prefer to do it.
Okay. Commissioner Berman also has her light on, so...
I'm ready to likely second your motion if you want to move forward.
I'll go ahead then and move that the Planning Commission finds the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act and approves tentative subdivision map SUB 23918, modification of subdivision regulations MOD 4519, and heritage tree removal authorization by adopting the resolution included as attachment A to the staff report, including conditions of approval in Exhibit A of the resolution, and incorporates all maps and testimony into the record by reference.
Okay, Commissioner Berman?
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Anyone aggrieved by the action of the Planning Commission has 10 calendar days to appeal the decision in writing to the City Council. Okay, moving on. Communications. Commission communications. Anybody have anything to say? I'm not seeing any lights up here, so we'll move on to staff communications.
Sure, I have a few. First, I wanted to provide you some follow-ups to some items that were recently in front of the Planning Commission. So 1567 Beach, which was the condo project at the north end of Beach Boulevard, as you know, was appealed to City Council. It upheld the Planning Commission's determination, and that has been appealed to the Coastal Commission. So we just received notice of that appeal recently, last week, and so there's no schedule yet on when that will be heard. The Salada parcel that you heard at, I believe, your last meeting was also appealed to the City Council. So we're confirming that hearing date in September, and so probably on your next Planning Commission agenda, we'll ask for a liaison for that hearing. Just some scheduling items. The overcrossing, the Sharp Park overcrossing, ribbon cutting has been moved due to Caltrans scheduling, and so we don't have another date, but it's not tomorrow. The next Planning Commission meeting will be on the 19th, and then don't forget that we do have a joint meeting scheduled with the City Council on the 26th of August. And then finally, I wanted to update you all, if you're following Board of Supervisors agendas, which maybe one of you is. Tomorrow, you might notice that the City of Pacifica is mentioned on the agenda related to a one-stop shop pilot program that we've been accepted to go on this journey with, to see how this is working with the Housing Department. So the county is matching one-for-one $50,000, so it's $100,000 total that we would have to work with property owners in town that are interested in creating ADUs in exchange for affordability requirements. So we have heard through our Home for All program, as well as the county has heard just kind of all over the county, that there seems to still be a lot of difficulty with how do you kind of get over the hump of how do you create an ADU? What are the regulations? Even how do you manage a contractor? Just kind of that technical support is kind of what's holding people back who may have the resources to do this, to do an ADU. And so basically the city's been accepted to this pilot program, provided the Board of Supervisors accepts their staff's recommendations tomorrow. And there'll be more agreements, yet to come in front of the City Council. But I think that that's great news if we can get, it's estimated 4 affordable ADUs out of this for a total public fund contribution of $100,000 is really actually a good deal to get some affordable units. So we're excited about that. So more to come.
Tina, for the study session coming up on the 26th, do we have a time on that yet?
We will likely be starting early. I don't have an exact time yet, but I will let you know as soon as I do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the report. I appreciate it. We've come to that time in our agenda. Commissioner Big Stick.
I move to adjourn.
And Commissioner Niblin.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Good night, all.
Night.